Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. I am Commander Claw, and just like Tiny Bones' Bauble Burglar, the Bauble Burglar, I have my hood on. So, if you're new to Magic, MTG Foundations, Jumpstart, or just the original set is going to be a blast for you because you guys get to do things that we didn't get to do if you're a veteran Magic player. Let me get right into the new Mono Black Commander. Tiny Bones Bauble Burglar for 2 mana. Colorless black, legendary creature, skeleton rogue on a 1/3 body. He says whenever an opponent discards a card, exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. During your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and many mana and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. Tap 4 mana, tap him, each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. So let's unpack Tiny Bones. I think the most important thing you need to know about this commander is you can cast spells from exile with stash counters on them when Tiny Bones is not on the battlefield. Why? Because they have stash counters on them. I think that's the most important thing new players need to know. So, really, how do you win with this commander? I don't think you're really winning with this commander. This commander just seems like it's all for fun. See what you can cast from other players' decks. Casting game-winning creatures or spells or permanents, enchantments, planeswalkers from your opponents. And it's good that you need to cast them early. So what you can do is maximize the amount of cards that you discard so you can put stash counters on them and play these game-winning spells. Let's find out what these cards are. So I had to put this card up first because I think a lot of new players do not know this card exists. This is a very good card for creatures that have huge mana costing abilities. Heartstone for 3 mana is an artifact. The cost of each creature ability required and activation cost is reduced by 1 colorless. This cannot reduce an ability's generic mana cost to less than 1. Trust me, every 1 counts. From 3 mana to 2 mana to 1 mana. Every one counts when you start making your deck and trying to make it more efficient and actually get to play the game by playing more spells. Okay, so this is a really good card. The rate is amazing. For 3 mana, Arterial Flow is the name of the card. It's a sorcery. Each opponent discards 2 cards. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Obviously, this is a vampire tribal card, but if you have opponents discard 2 cards, that's a total of 6 cards. So what does that mean? That's a total of 6 cards that you can possibly play from Tiny Bones. I think the other element of Tiny Bones is players are discarding cards. So they're going to be holding on to cards that they don't want you to have the opportunity to play. So think about that. What would that situation be? Now, if you're making opponents pretty much hold on to their best card because you're making them discard other cards, you really need to make them get rid of all cards. So when they have no cards in hand, you are controlling the game. So what I need to say is Tiny Bones is a weak mono black control commander. Discard control. Dark Deal is a great card that does this. I think another element that players are probably not thinking about is you need to give players cards. If they don't have cards to discard, what cards can you play? So, in essence, you need to be controlling how many cards they have in hand and how many cards they can possibly gain. So, we have Dark Deal for 3 mana. It's a sorcery. Each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards -1. This is a mini wheel. It's symmetrical, meaning that every player does this. This is a very cost-effective card. So, the more cards that they have in their hand, the more cards you can stash and play. Okay, so Fraying Omnipotence for 5 mana, feel like it's that Haymaker mid-game card when you had nothing going on. Maybe you couldn't mana fix. Maybe you didn't have any mana clump. Something bad at the beginning of the game happened for you. And you finally get this card. It says, each player loses half their life, then discards half the cards in their hand, then sacks half the creatures they control, a round up each time. This 5 mana sorcery, I feel like, is just a good mid-game card to get some kind of balance on the board, balance in your hand, and maybe like at that mid-game point, players have a good amount of cards in their hand and the cards they don't want to give away. And you get to do this to every player, so you get to see a good amount of cards. 6 cards stashed away in exile that your opponents cannot use is very devastating. Okay, so finally we have Peer into the Abyss for 7 mana, 3 black, 4 colors. It's a sorcery. One of my favorite sorceries. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. So, what you most likely would like to do is cast this on one of your opponents. Yes, it is risky because they get to draw a lot of cards. But at their end step, they gotta discard a lot of cards. So if they're drawing 40 cards, and you only can keep 7 in your hand, that's 33 cards that have stash counters on them that they cannot use. And you gotta also think they are limited on the amount of mana. And most decks require several spells, cards to actually do what type of thing they want to do. Like if you drew 40 cards and you could only play 2 of them, how good was that card draw? Not that good. All on one turn and you got to discard 33? You're going to grimace. So do not underestimate Peer into the Abyss. Hey, so thank you for watching Breaking Brews on Tiny Bones Bauble Burglar. If you know any other good cards that would work really well with this commander, put them in the comments section. Otherwise, the next video is going to be another MTG Foundations commander. Check it out.